All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for letting us take a quick little break there, get some stretching in. Although I made a mistake, I've been standing for about 2 hours. I'm going to have to sit down soon. Um, so we've got a couple questions in the chat, and then we wanted to talk about Trans Day of Visibility. So let's get through a couple of these questions real quick. If y'all have any more questions in the chat, go ahead and throw them in there. Type at the Transverse first, so it highlights for me. And they're talking now in chat. Ryan's still asking kind of questions about prisons and sports. So maybe we can get into that. But let's go through some of the questions we've got here first, and then we'll do that. First off, I love that your show is hat collecting, and Cyric, I had it right the first time. I don't know why it didn't sound right coming out of my mouth. Cyric asks, I do need to know at some point of the stream if all of Lacey's guitars wear hats.
Oh, I love that question. I have far more hats than I have guitars, I will be honest with you, but I got my guitar out kind of recently because I do plan to I want to actually try writing like a new song on the spot for a stream. It might not work very well, but I'm going to try it. And so I got my guitar out, and it just happens to be a good little hat rack for the background. So that's why there's a hat there.
Well, and again, for aesthetics, I do love the complete purple theme. I love that you've just really gone all into that, wearing the purple shirt and everything. You've really committed, and I appreciate that.
Just for anyone who kind of has tuned in more recently, this is not actually my design, but I found this shirt online and I had to buy it because it just makes perfect sense for me. But yeah, purple is like, I literally, if I turn my camera around and showed you the rest of my room, there's so much purple stuff. It is my color, it is my brand, and I definitely lean into it.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, we can do this one. It's usually kind of a tangent inspirer, but Julie always loves to ask, Star Wars or Star Trek? Where do your nerd loyalties lie?
When I was younger, I found Star Trek really boring and Star Wars was more exciting, but more like recently because of like all of the like extra Star Wars stuff, like that kind of like I don't know, I just kind of like grew out of that, I guess, and I feel like Star Trek is maybe a little bit more my speed now, but that's to say I've pretty much only watched The Next Generation to any extent. Yeah. So I can't say too much about that, unfortunately.
But as long as you don't fall in like a love hate, then I think we're good. Nobody's
People
gonna.
like what they like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
So yeah. Well, if she's not, well, you said you did start as more of a Star Wars fan than anything. Julie's asking, have you seen my droids? And she wants to know your opinion of those.
I'm not sure if this is like an inside joke or not. I I guess I can't say that I have.
Okay.
Maybe I should.
Yeah, for those that don't know, I have a side hustle where I custom paint the Star Wars droids that you get from Disneyland, the ones that you build there.
Okay.
They're 12 inches tall, fully remote control, and yeah, I take them, custom paint them, and sell them. So, let's I think we're gonna let chat kind of keep talking it out about what Ryan's questions about gender and sports and things like that.
I was just gonna say, I know
go
if you sorry, I just because I know that this comes up on Twitter pretty regularly, and I know there's some tweet threads out there. There's people that tweet about it. So if you're feeling lucky and you want to go search on Twitter, you may be able to find some of those. Or actually, I think Katie Montgomery might have even covered some of that stuff in some of her videos on YouTube. So yeah, just a couple suggestions there.
Yeah, and one of the things that he just asked, that I think I do want to address really quickly is, um, the chat won't scroll up for some stupid reason. Hold on a second. Why is it getting stuck? Um, but your sex is assigned at birth, or your sex assigned at birth is your biological gender, question mark. And the thing is that's not entirely accurate. I know a lot of people like to say it's your biological gender, but the thing that forgets, and where it's really wrong, is that it assumes that your body is the biological part and that's it, and it doesn't account for the fact that your brain is also part of your biology. And those two things, your sex organs and your brain, develop in the womb at different times, and they can develop differently. I don't know if you want to believe that it's the soul like we were talking about before, or the soul in a shell, or the fact that that those developments happen differently, but for some reason they develop differently. And so
So
the
yeah.
part of your biology that controls your emotions and your thinking and how you identify yourself, who you feel like, can be different than the outside. And so to call your genitalia your biological gender really misses at least half of what's going on there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say again because like I've learned some of what I most enjoy. I think this is one of the questions actually. I don't know if we touched on it or not, but one of the favorite things that I've learned through this whole process is just kind of more like the science behind things. And like I remember learning that like I think it was like a podcast or a video or something I saw, like why do men have nipples? And it's because like in the womb, I think it was that like every fetus starts as like a female and or like something like that and then can develop into a male and like so it's also why like if you kind of like it's kind of said as a joke sometimes, but it's not entirely meant that way. But like the clitoris is kind of just like a micro penis,
Mm,
and like a penis is just like a giant clit kind of thing. And so I think to me, if I was looking at it and like, okay, if there was these two literally completely different physical manifestations that could not possibly because like then there's intersex people who kind of fall in that kind of like gamut. So just looking at that like that, it seems more obvious to me that it's not black and white. And people who try to make it that way, I think maybe a lot of them are just trying to simplify it because it's kind of scary to not understand something and so you try to come up with explanations and you try um, to make sense of things, but there's lots of scientists out there who are telling you that that's not right and that eighth grade biology or whatever is just not the whole picture, and
mm.
more people need to listen.
Yeah, yeah, it's not as it's impossible to cut it into the black and white, male or female, the man woman thing. It's just, it isn't that cut and dried. Rosa brings up a really good point. Um, there are people born with ambiguous genitalia, some people who have more than XX and XY chromosomes. There are, different mixes of chromosomes that are different. You can just look at the human population and see that there's a vast difference in how people develop. And you bring up a really good point about biology, is that we all start exactly the same, and then the hormones diverge one way or the other. Um, like you said, but that's why we have nipples and all those kinds of things. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that things would develop, differently sometimes. It just makes sense. And then, like I said, if you just looked at it on the surface, body types and presentations and stuff, tomboys, butch females, and more feminine boys and things like that. It's a spectrum. It's when you start to really try and lock into those things that it really gets confusing for everybody. And so,
Mhm.
and there was one other thing I kind of wanted to, let's see, where was it? I think it was here. Let's see. Um, oh, And then he mentioned trying to understand but can't fathom, and was saying a little bit about kind of getting agitated, and this is a point I kind of want to bring up. We love to welcome in everybody into the Transverse, which is our greater organization that we're putting together. And not only trans, non-binary, intersex people, but then allies and spouses and things like that. The thing to remember when you're welcome and allowed to come into those sorts of environments as someone that's an outsider and maybe doesn't understand, is that it's not the responsibility of the people in the community to convince you and to educate you. There are plenty of resources out there. There's plenty of actual scientific evidence. Um, it's and there's plenty for you out there to go ahead and do the learning. Go through Reddit and a lot of other places. There's a lot of information out there. So, don't put it on the burden of a particular trans person you're talking to, or maybe even a group, to explain everything and make everything super clear for you. Um, and same thing as we were saying earlier, have the patience, know that, maybe you don't understand it right now, or maybe it hasn't been made completely clear for you, for the way you need to understand it, but just be patient with it and know that the answer is out there. Yeah. I mean, trans people have existed for thousands of years, and we will always be around. So
If I can do a quick shameless plug, if anyone in the chat is looking for another resource, I know there's like lots of resources out there, but so I have a series of educational ebooks that I've done in the past, and one of them is called The Curiosity Guide to Pride, and it's kind of a mixture of like kind of showing a lot of the flags and explaining kind of the meaning behind them and kind of
mhm.
some of the histories, and I designed it intentionally to be like something that could be in like a doctor's office or like a school counselor's office, or just an easy resource for like parents or teachers or doctors uh to kind of quickly get brushed up on some stuff beyond the like absolute obvious. And I never quite got so far as to try and like get it out into circulation. It's free, it's just there, curiosityguides.com. If you want to check that out, that might be a little bit helpful
Mm.
for you or family or friends or anybody.
Yeah, that's great. So, tomorrow is, well, in some places in the world, it already is Transgender Day of Awareness, but tomorrow is it here for us in the Western Hemisphere. Um, and I love the point that you brought up in our previous chat, about um, the fact that you don't showcase being trans in a lot of what you do. Why don't you go ahead and dive into some of that, and what you wanted to talk about on that subject?
Yeah, this kind of started, I think, with a TikTok video that I did recently where I just posed the question of like, hey, fellow trans TikTokers, do you consider yourself a trans creator or a creator who just happens to be trans? And both are obviously valid, and those aren't the only two options. But like, I know some people, literally all of their content, everything that they do centers on being trans, the experience, support, community, education, memes, all that kind of stuff. And other people, they're just trying to live their life, and they make stuff and they do stuff, and they just happen to be trans. And like, and so for me, I'm kind of a little bit more, I guess, in the middle, but more towards the like just happen to be side, because like I have done a lot of designs and art, and like my book is literally two trans main characters. All right, making a lot of noise here. And like I have had several trans people on my show, but it's not like I don't put it up front, and because not everything I do, it's like, yeah, it's a part of me. And like a lot of my designs too are just are about like other things about like the other kind of communities that I'm part of, or just other ideas. But um I like my music because I did all of that before I was trans, so that has kind of no attachment to it. But yeah, I'm sort of answering I feel like I was much more succinct yesterday, but just yeah, I feel like personally I'm more of a creator who happens to be trans and does do some trans content, but it's not what I want to be most known for.
Mhm.
And I don't hide it, but I also don't like. You'll never see trans flags hanging in my background unless very very specific reasons,
Well, they're not
and
purple, so
maybe.
yeah.
Yes, well, see, that's the thing. At least the non-binary flag has a purple stripe, but yeah, I don't. As I said to you, it kind of made me feel a little bit like a bit of a traitor to my own kind sometimes, especially in because I said to you, just like realize, oh yeah, I'm doing a show the eve of this big day, and I don't feel like I have all that much to say about it, and it's not. I'm not this like flag waving trans person, but I do still try to contribute some stuff to the community, and I'm still involved a little bit, and just I've kind of found, I guess, what fits for me and what feels right for me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I know like some people, they just want to live their life and they don't want it to all be about them being trans, and that's obviously fine. And so I guess being able to sort of selectively engage is helpful for me.
Hmm. Well, and that's why I really wanted to bring up that point as we talk about Trans Day of Visibility, and that is that being trans, being under the trans umbrella, you're valid, no matter
Mhm.
what your expression is and how, um, like how much you tout it or how much you just kind of let it be a subtle background part of you. Um, each way you identify is valid on this day of visibility. It's about you being visible as the true you and not feeling like you have to toe some particular line or be some, particular advocate or, being out there trumpeting the benefits of, whatever, anything. Um, it's important to just basically make sure that we accept all trans people at this time, whatever, however you want to present and however you want to be visible, what makes you feel right and how you want to show yourself to the world. I want to make sure that we
Yeah,
validate all of those levels of visibility for all the people under
I
the trans
think
umbrella.
I think another aspect to be honest for me is because I have seen other trans people, particularly trans women, kind of stating concerns of having like harassers or stalkers or people threatening their life, especially if they're outspoken. And I sometimes am outspoken in general, and I have really because I was I've said this to friends before that one of the changes is just when you suddenly you're just kind of now I'm living as a woman, and now all of a sudden if it's dark out and I'm walking home or something, I gotta like be looking over my shoulder. I gotta be suspicious of every guy that comes anywhere near me, and I that sucks, but that's a reality. And so I think and like also like I said, I don't post a ton of selfies online, and that's like largely because I want to keep the focus on like my art and my ideas and my creations, or the guests on my show because it's about them, not me.
Hmm.
But it's also because I have seen and I have heard the harassment and the trouble that can come along for the people who do showcase like themselves a lot more, and I that's just kind of a choice that I've made. I'm sort of being visible in the way, like I said, that sort of feels works for me and feels safe.
Hmm.
Um, and it's because like I don't want to hide. I don't want to have to completely keep my head down, but I also don't want to be Katie Montgomery, who's a self-professed goes looking for fights on purpose online kind of person.
Hmm.
Um, and I admire that there's people out there that are willing and able to do that, and it's just I don't think I have that in me anymore.
Yeah. And that's what I was kind of trying to get at there is that it's not necessary. You don't have to be that. There is just the unfortunate thing about being trans in this current environment that the more visible you are, the more you are at risk, the more you are in in physical danger a lot of the times. Um, you
Mm,
know, so having a presentation and being out as trans to the level where you're still safe and comfortable is the most important. And like I said, I just want to make sure we celebrate that as we're celebrating all this, because I grew up as a trans person the last 2 years on Instagram. That's where I found my community of trans people, was through Instagram. And Instagram is the most curated and perfect version of everything. And it's really easy to fall in the trap of like feeling you're less than because you can't live up to an ideal or whatever, or you're not the advocate, you're not the well-spoken person that these other people are. And it's just not true. Your presentation, however you look, is you, and it's true to you, and it's good enough.
I know it can be frustrating. I'll speak from my own experience on this one because, yeah, I do see some of the accounts that, attract conventionally attractive trans women who maybe have been able to have like all the different surgeries and post these like, really amazing pic after really amazing pic. And they have, thousands or tens of thousands of followers or maybe even hundreds of thousands in some cases. And, it's easy to kind of envy that and be like, I want that much kind of like attention or audience, but because compared, it's that whole trope or thing about you post a picture of a beautiful painting, it'll get 10 likes. You post a picture of your face and you'll get 100, and it really makes you kind of feel like what you do, like okay, sure, I'm pretty, but nothing else about me matters. And that's another reason I've really tried to keep my Instagram particularly focused on like my art and like, okay, maybe I don't get a ton of attention, but at least I feel like I have an honest idea of how popular my stuff actually is and what people actually think of it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, speaking of, we haven't really delved very deeply into all the things that you do. I did put a link in the chat a little bit ago. Let's see, do I still have it in the copy and paste? I do. Let me drop that in there again. This is a link to artemiscreates.com, your website, which I think then basically links out to everything else, right?
That everything is there. I've more recently been starting to use Linktree. It's a
Okay.
very, very simple, clean like interface, but that's another easy way for any other creators out there who don't want to try to link to 20 different things every time. And Linktree, you can just kind of have them all in one place. And just because my website, there is a lot of stuff on there, and I think for some people it might be a little overwhelming. So yeah, I guess right now kind of the main things are my YouTube, the hat collecting show, and trying to get more into Twitch slowly but surely. And when I kind of have the time and the inspiration, I do still like to do designs and whatever else kind of strikes my fancy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as I mentioned before, I did write my first short novel and published it last year. It's called Parker and Tucker Private Investigators. That is on my website. It's on Amazon as well. And
And
yeah, I have.
what brought about the book? What was the motivation to start writing a book? And give us a little bit about what the story is about and sort of the background behind how you came up with it.
So the genesis of the book was, you- for other creatives out there, you'll know like sometimes something will pop into your head and you're just like, that idea, just at its very base, is too good not to do something with. And
Mm-hmm.
so Parker and Tucker was not actually the original name for it, and I feel like maybe I shouldn't say this because like I'll explain why in a second. It originally came into my mind as Packer and Tucker, and I thought that was really funny because it's kind of this like playful tongue-in-cheek reference that trans people would definitely get, and
Mm-hmm.
it's for both a trans man and a trans woman. And so
That's great.
I
I
was
love it. Yeah.
I was doing that, and I was like I need to do something with that. And I just like it just because it sounded like a detective duo kind of thing to me. It's like, okay, so I just sat down one day and I just started writing, and like that. And so I had that, and then I sent that to friends for like feedback, and like it was always like, there's something here, just this could be cleaned up, or this could be expanded, or this isn't really clear. And so I think the published version, I think, was either the fourth or the fifth draft, and the story really kind of like evolved, and it centers around like a theft at the local high school from a non-binary student. And it's a kind of a mixture of like, it's kind of set in like a small town, and there's both like allies and there are very obvious like enemies and antagonists. And The Tucker character is based heavily on myself. And then sorry, I almost said Packer. Parker is kind of a mixture of like some people that I know and just kind of me filling in the blanks. But the reason I switched away from Packer and Tucker was because a few people did bring up the legitimate point that, having it be named after like a reference to transgenitals is kind of not helping our cause. And I was like, you know what,
Hmm.
that's I see that point. And so I was trying to I labored over it a lot until I finally was like, because I was so used to saying it had been months that I'd been like Packer and Tucker, and it was, and then I tried these
Funny.
different names for the Parker character, and I finally was just like, "Oh, you know what, Parker and Tucker, it's almost exactly the same, so I won't mess it up as much, and it still works."
Yeah.
So yeah, and I had fun writing it, but also as an experience, because it's a short novel, it's a short novella basically. I think it was 30,000 words or something like that. And so knowing that like a full-length novel is like, like 4 times that basically, I do have ideas for other books that I want to write, but it feels like I would probably have to stop kind of most other things that I'm doing and just focus on, and I don't have that in me as much anymore. I used to do it more
Mm.
because when I did music years ago, I would literally just like spend an entire year working on an album, and that was like my primary focus. And I can't, I don't, my attention span won't really allow for that as much anymore. So I find doing my shows a little bit easier because record for 2 hours, I edit it and I put it out, and then Twitch is kind of, I can just do it whenever. And yeah, that's long messy answer.
No, that's such a great project to just sort of fall into, though. I love that. And then how did hat collecting come about?
That is kind of a culmination. So I've kind of explained this before that I about 7 8 years ago, when I sort of started on the original trajectory that I'm kind of still on, with just trying to find a creative project that would scratch my itches and make me feel fulfilled because my job didn't.
Hmm.
And I started a blog and I started a podcast, and the podcast I was interviewing people, and they were basically all people that I knew because that's who I sort of had access to. And I would interview them about their like job or their area of expertise, and just try to like learn something from them and share it with my audience. That's all what I like. I like doing that. And I did that for about a year and a half, and then I stopped for various reasons. And then a couple years later, I was like, I miss interviewing people. I want to do that again, but I want to do it a little bit differently. So then I did like a video format thing, and I did a talk show kind of thing, but it was based around like random facts. And I had fun with that, but it was also a lot of work. And so I did 10 episodes, and then I stopped. And then a few more years go by, and I'm just like, man, I'm itching to interview people again. I I don't know why, but that just seems to like really be a thing that kind of works for me.
Hmm.
And so I was like, I need to do it again. And I but I wanted to like, because obviously I've done these different projects and I didn't want to just keep, so I kind of, I just, it's been a theme throughout my kind of like adult life that I have all these different interests and I do all these different things, and I just literally cannot pick one thing. I have to kind of bounce around and have that kind of freedom.
Hmm.
So but I also realize that, people, even if they have like a main job, like if they're an accountant or if they're a lawyer or if they're a construction worker or whatever, like that's never the only, no one does just one thing, and everyone has a story. And that's the tagline of the show, because that's what I realized, that I came up with a set of questions to kind of coax out that story and to kind of trace, like loosely trace people's path and look at, kind of like you're saying, where did you start? And so it's like, what was your childhood dream? And it doesn't matter if you didn't end up doing it or not, but it's just, it's interesting to kind of to see that, and where you are and what happened in between. And yeah, it's kind of evolved into uh, it's got this kind of like life of its own now, and I'm really enjoying, like, again, learning from different people, getting their perspective, getting their wisdom, their advice, and sharing it with people.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that, and
And
just kind of finding,
yeah.
just figuring out what makes people tick. Like, okay, yeah, at this point, late in your life, you've settled into this as your thing, and then you've said before that that's what you identify as. But there's so many other things that you do, and so many other things that went into making you who you are. That I love that
Mhm.
this kind of study of humanity and how people settle into things and the other things that they're into. I love that.
Yeah. Another thing I love about the show is it kind of started based around that idea of that, we're supposed to have so much of our lives figured out by the age of 30, and a lot of these other common cultural narratives and ideas have kind of come forward, and I base several of the questions on them because I'm like, I want to challenge these ideas because again, I think a lot of people just they kind of hear it or it's kind of implied and they just accept it, but they're not true, they're not accurate, and they kind of hurt people sometimes. So I like to hear, present these ideas to my guests and kind of get there, and like, yeah, everyone's just kind of like, yeah, no, I didn't have hardly anything figured out by 30, or like, just what are some of the other, there's a few other of these, like, these ideas um
Mm.
that I've kind of pushed back against, and I feel like that's become a part of the heart of the show as well.
Yeah, that touches on the thing that bummed me out when I got older, was that you have this idea as a kid that adults know what they're doing. Adults always seem to know what they're doing, and they've got the adult thing down or whatever. And then you get older and you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know how to make decisions. Like, I'm just trying and stumbling. Like, I have no idea. But I thought adults were supposed to know when they. So I love, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
taking apart some of those tropes.
Yeah, and my goal is eventually, like, I've had one elderly person on the show so far, and I want to have more. I want to have teenagers on. Like, I want to literally get like kind of all of, different parts of society to kind of share their perspectives and their experiences. And but I just, for anyone who's watching, I want everyone who watches to be able to get something out of each episode. So I want, and that's why I end the show on advice for a teenager, advice for a 30-year-old, and advice for like an elder, because it's interesting. And a lot of, this is another idea, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't think I would have anything to say to an older person, and that's an idea that, again, a lot of us have internalized, that like people that are older than us, we can't teach them anything because they're wiser. And it's like, no, there's everyone can teach everyone something. And so I'm trying to, to get those ideas, and just, if any, because again, I would love for like teenagers, or for my show, like, I keep my show clean and PG because it would be awesome if it could be, shown in schools, or parents could watch it with their kids, and learn something from that, and kind of help them see their future a little bit differently, and maybe a little bit more optimistically, or something like that. And that just, I love that.
Wow, that's so wonderful, and that's a interesting note on the show. I do try not to swear on this show, but yeah, I wonder if like there is some thought to be had of what
I
where it
mean,
could open
yeah,
it up
that's
a little bit more to a wider
that's
audience.
just the decision that I've made, because I've always wanted to try and keep my stuff more accessible and more just applicable to more people. And like, I do swear in real life. I do have some less popular ideas, but yeah, the show, I try to keep it like genuine and wholesome, and really, again, highlight the guest, highlight their story. It's about them, not about me, and hopefully everyone that watches can learn something from each episode.
So, what are your plans for tomorrow? Are you doing anything particular or special for Trans Day of Visibility? Do you have anything coming out artwork wise or anything?
I wish that I could say that I did. I took tomorrow as a vacation day because I figured it was going to be a bit of a later night tonight, and I just wanted to like be able to sleep in guilt free,
Well, I like that.
um, and just kind of like take tomorrow a bit slower. And Um, yeah, I think I kind of want to like do a do a stream of some sort on Twitch. I just don't quite know what yet, but
Hmm.
um Yeah, I just yeah, things have been a little kind of chaotic and in flux for me lately, so it's been a little bit harder for me to kind of. That's why I said yesterday. I literally realized yesterday, like, oh yeah, Trans Day of Visibility, because it hasn't been on my mind because so many other things have.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I totally get that. We've got a lot of things going on here at the Transverse. First thing in particular is tomorrow we've got two shows where we're finally moving Valkyries to Wednesday and sticking to that. That'll be on at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. I know most people think that I say that backwards. It should be 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, 8 Central is when the Valkyries episode will be, and that'll be an hour. And then we've got a new show coming on after that, which is the Builders Block, where we'll be cycling through a different builder each week, who will do, whatever they build. So we've got a
Hmm.
Lego builder, we've got a mech builder, and then I'm starting off tomorrow's episode because it's easier just because I've got the command center set up. But I will be working on one of my droids tomorrow. From that would be then 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern.
I'll have to tune into the reruns of those because that sounds interesting. But that's yeah, I'm usually asleep by 10 o'clock Eastern.
Fair enough, fair enough. But yeah, that's a new show we're rolling out tomorrow, and we're really excited about that as we start to expand out the channel. So hope everybody can come and watch that, or at least like you said, catch it on the VOD later. But yeah, it's got some fun things going out. So I don't know if we're gonna. I mean, the Valkyries episode will heavily feature topics about the Trans Day of Visibility, but that might be about all I get to too, because the show tonight is going to wipe me out, and then getting ready for 2 shows tomorrow. A lot of stuff to do. Well,
Hmm.
I'm going to quit yapping. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lacey, for being on the show and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.